I am going to start this post by saying I am an empath, so I can pick up on energy in rooms and have always been sensitive to ghosts. A while ago, when I was living at a relative's house, I started dealing with some very bizarre energy at night, particularly in the master bedroom. Shadows would move around a lot, and I would hear whispers in my ear frequently before going to bed while I was laying in bed. I actually had to sleep in a different room to get away from it, because it would get very angry whenever I was sleeping in a specific room, and I would wake up with bizarre marks on my body. I'm not sure if it was shadow people, a ghost, or a poltergeist more specifically that I was dealing with, but whatever it was very hostile. I lived there for about a year and ended up moving into a new apartment right before the pandemic started. Things were pretty normal here up until the last 2 weeks. I could feel things getting tenser in the air around here, but didn't think much of it. Then I was startled awake by a grown man standing next to my bed that I had never seen before, who I believed wanted to harm me. It took me 3 hours to calm down after that because it was so realistic. He was standing between me and my mirror. I blinked a few times and he vanished, but that scared the hell out of me. So I started researching online, and it turns out that mirrors next to your bed are a big no-no because they can act as a portal to the other side. I also had that same mirror next to my bed in the old house where this activity started occurring the first time. I had seen many shadow people before since I was a kid, but this is the first time I had seen someone that was so realistic. I actually checked my apartment over after to make sure there wasn't an intruder. As a precaution, I'm going to throw away the mirror. I've also placed black tourmaline and many other protective crystals around my apartment and put some salt down in my room. But even moving the mirror to another location has seemed to lighten the energy in the bedroom tremendously. Hoping to completely clear out the apartment of whatever it was in the next few weeks, and I will never place a mirror next to my bed ever again. This happened 6 months ago in a house I moved into with a roommate. She had lived there for a year prior, and once I moved in, we started rearranging the living room. I need to note that there were old bedroom sets in the basement from the original owners of the house, bed frames, dressers, and mirrors. Back to the living room, there was a mirror on the wall opposite the fireplace, with a mirror above the mantel. The mirror opposite the fireplace came from the basement and was hung up by the girl that lived there before I moved in. So I take the mirror off the wall as we are putting our TV in that spot and prop it up against the wall perpendicular to the wall. It was hung until we can figure out where to put it. This is when we started to notice the weird things happening and hadn't quite realized the mirror could be the issue. There is a cot in the basement that was set up apparently by the owner of the house if he ever came to town. Weird in my opinion, but whatever. Well, the lights above the cot randomly stopped working, and that corner of the basement just started having an eerie vibe. I tell my roommate this, and we go down to investigate. What we found scared the shit out of us. Bare footprints on the cot seemingly pacing back and forth side to side. No one in their right mind would walk barefoot down there as it's dirty, and there's been rats. We measured our feet next to the prints, and while roughly the same length, they were way too wide to be either of ours. A couple days later, I am down in the basement doing laundry. I make my dog come down there with me because it's so creepy. He wouldn't stop staring at the corner containing the cot, and I felt I was being watched. A moment later, the lights above the washer and dryer started flickering, so I got the hell out of there. The same day later in the afternoon, I'm standing in the living room on the phone with my brother talking about work with my back to the mirror, propped against the floor. My dog starts growling and aggressive barking. My initial thought was both mine and my roommate's dog were behind me fighting over a toy, so I snapped at them to stop. And when I turned around, it was just my dog staring into the mirror, but not looking at his reflection. He's 5 years old and has seen his reflection 1,000s of times. It doesn't concern him. So that freaked me out, and is when I started connecting dots. I had a betta fish in a tank on one side of the mirror, and my roommate had a cool palm tree-like plant on the other side. My fish died suddenly, and the plant wasn't doing well no matter her efforts. I have to note I had been telling my roommate that the mirror seemed warped, because I felt I looked horrible and fat when I saw myself in it walking into the room. She apparently had also noticed this, so I bring up my mirror theory to her, and she immediately grabs the mirror and puts it in our detached garage on the backyard. We both felt better about this until the next day. I went out back to smoke, and it was raining, so I opened the garage door for some shelter. A fluorescent bulb was on the floor in the middle of the garage as though it had fallen, but it was not on a place it would have seeming landed and completely unbroken. It's like someone laid it there. I look up, see the mirror facing me in GTFO. I explain this to my roommate, and we immediately grab the mirror to walk it across the street to Goodwill. Super convenient in this moment. She's holding it by the wire it hung on for years, and the moment we reach the edge of the property, the wire snaps, and the mirror fell to the ground without breaking. This thing did not want to leave. We get it across the street and leave it. The next day, the lights in the basement started working, and we had no other weird experiences. I am here because I think I'm being haunted either by the previous tenants or something else. I feel like I'm going bonkers, padded white room crazy. You'd think the manager would knock down my rent because it's haunted? Not really. He thinks I'm fabricating it all for that reason. He said the last tenants tried the same. In his words, joke's on them. They died, by the way. And I had thought it wouldn't be so bad. No, KC don't rent that apartment. Unfortunately, I did not listen to my best friend. My name is KC. I do not have any fancy college degrees. As soon as I graduated, I got a job at the local supermarket and saved enough to move out of my parents' basement and judgment eyes. 3 weeks ago, I had moved into my new spacious one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor. I live in a small town, enough to be left alone from others who don't give a shit as much as I do. Right now, I'm sitting in the laundry room that's located in the basement of my building. The only spot I can get a tiny bit of a signal on my phone. It's freezing. My fingers feel numb, but it's better than not having any internet at all. If you live locally, which I highly doubt you do, we've probably bumped into each other on the street, or I rang up your groceries at the supermarket. I wouldn't say my town is surrounded by a lot of acres of forest, nor would I say there's too little. But the most exciting thing to ever happen in our town was the 10 a.m. freight train couldn't stop fast enough because of a fawn stood in the middle of the tracks. The train flipped and spilled out an almost endless supply of Twinkies. All the kids and adults in the neighborhood was bringing pillowcases to stuff them full. The second most exciting thing to ever happen was a senior prank that still lives on as a legend in our town for years to come. A bunch of seniors dressed up as electricians and went to every single home pretending to inspect it when they were planting hard-boiled eggs. They had left a message on the news board that the town uses to catch up on the latest news or read articles, that they hid eggs in every single home and apartment. The first person to find the plastic egg wins $1 million. You can guess what happened. The whole town went into a frenzy, not only because of the money, but because every house started to smell like rotten eggs after a month in the hot summer heat that took over our town. That year, even the government would have put a dome over our town for being the foulest smelling town. That was 2 years ago. Until this day, no one has not found that plastic egg. Rumor has it, there was never a plastic egg to begin with. But some still look for it. But all that aside, I did mention that I may be haunted, didn't I? Honestly, I don't think it's any of the neighbors or the manager pulling a prank on me. How do I know? Well, I would have to say the night I moved into my apartment, I was taking a shower. Side note, when I shower, I like to sing. I don't know if I am horrible or not, because I honestly don't do it for others. Singing relaxes me. I even do it when I'm anxious or cold or even when I am happy. I was in the shower, normal as it could be. That is until I got out of my shower. The mirrors get fogged up from the steam. At the time, I had wrapped a towel around me. I stood in shock at the foggy mirror. Written on the foggy mirror said, "You have a lovely voice." I live alone. I took a picture of it and sent it to my manager's office. Later that night, I had just unpacked my last box when I saw a cockroach walking like a human across the hardwood floor. His little antennas flicked here and there. I was frozen to the spot. I couldn't help but watch this cockroach walking upright through my apartment with a tiny little broom in its legs or hands. It swept dirt into a corner and disappeared behind my entertainment center. That night, I had put out cockroach sticky traps all over the floor. If you're wondering if I caught him, I didn't. I went out for a walk for a while. When I got back to my building to head back to my apartment, I heard a wailing coming from my apartment. Immediately, I had sprung to action and opened my door. I found the medium was cowering in the corner of my living room. Her hand was covered in blood. Her blood was smeared all over my entire apartment. She was babbling nonsense about demons. Her eyes weren't fixed on anything, as she kept a firm grip on one of her necklaces as she prayed to God. I called the ambulance. I had to give a statement, and the cops were baffled when I told them I had hired her to cleanse my apartment, and I heard her screaming when I got back from my walk. A few days later, I'd gotten a call from the first responding officer who had taken my statement and told me that the medium is going to be spending some time in a psychiatric ward for a while, and that they believe she wasn't a real medium, but a scammer who pretends to be a psychic medium, and that she was planning on robbing me blind. But instead, she had a mental breakdown. There was no evidence that I did anything to her. That, and of course the officer had said there was others who had been robbed by her. He did say she was missing a finger, as if someone cut it off or bit it off, and the medium had told the officer a demon bit her finger off, which I thought was strange. I couldn't help but feel on edge. I glanced about my entire apartment and asked out loud, half-jokingly, "Hey, whoever is haunting me, did you make that woman go crazy?" No response, just silence greeted me. Yeah, I didn't think so either. I'm going crazy myself. I clucked my tongue and sighed nervously. I had started cleaning up my apartment. The blood seemed to be everywhere, plus my entire apartment was in disarray. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if it was the so-called medium or the ghosts that haunted my apartment. As I was cleaning up, I had noticed there was more pools of blood in my bedroom carpet, and seeing some of my mother's jewelry in my bedroom strung out the floor, including my mom's wedding ring on the floor. But that wasn't all. There was a woman's finger in the ring. I picked it up and felt a chill run down my spine. With a closer inspection, it did look like someone did bite it off. "What the fuck?" I whispered to myself. I slid my mother's ring off the finger, and I placed the severed finger in a sandwich baggie and called the police officer back and told him I found the finger. He did swing by and pick it up. I would have written the whole situation off as one of those weird moments that is now becoming a regular situation in my life. If not, what happened later that night. I had taken a shower to wash that woman's blood off me, and when I pulled the curtain back after turning the water off and getting done with my shower, written in the steamed-up mirrors, "You are welcome." And I just stared at it. It sounds silly, but one of the most terrifying feelings must be someone writing messages in my foggy mirror after I take a shower. My heart was racing as I quickly got dressed and ran to my bed like a scared little child and hid under the covers for the rest of the night. But I couldn't sleep that night. I kept seeing unidentifiable shadows across my bedroom wall. So I turned my bedroom light on because I will admit I was scared what could have been lurking in the shadows in my room. I know it's irrational to think there is a demon or monster hiding in my bed or closet, but you'd bet I'd checked those before slipping back into bed without turning my lights off that night. That morning when I woke up, I saw wet boot prints facing my bed, as if someone had been standing over my bed and watched me sleep. I followed those footsteps to my bathroom, and apparently they started from the mirror. It sounds unbelievable, but there was a boot print on the mirror, then another on the sink countertop, and it carried on to the lid of the toilet seat, then the floor. And they walked to my room. I don't know what to make of it at all. I had been jumping with every creak in my apartment. I was being paranoid, and felt as if I wasn't the only one living in this apartment anymore.